All right, everybody. This is the origins of Israel. I'm going to go through this very slowly with a little bit of speed. One, two, three, four. I got four sources and scriptures giving you the beginning of the nation of Israel, what happened to them in the past, and what's happening now. I'm not talking about the land of Israel, I'm talking about the people, the originals. So the first source is the book of Judith, a book that was removed from your Bible. If you have a Bible app, you can change the upper text style of the Bible. It should be King James Version with Apocrypha. So you can do that to follow along, or you can get a 1611 Bible app and read along that way. I think there's a website as well. Many reasons why these scriptures were taken out, but I know the main reason, but I'm not going to mention that right now. So the book of Judith, chapter 5, verse 6 through 8, talks about the origins of Israel. If you want to talk about the origins of Israel, you have to talk about Abraham. So we're going to go to 5, 6, 8, talking about the children of the Chaldees. Who are they? Before we move forward, we're going to read this. This is a key indicator, something very important. So it says from the Bible Dictionary, Zondervan, a very established company in printing Bibles, talking about Ham. This is Noah's sons. Ham, the youngest son of Noah, the father of the dark races, not the Negroes, but the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites. So Ham gave birth to black peoples except the Negroes, and we'll get to that later on, why it says that. Very interesting. Okay. And this is the book of Judith, chapter 5, and we're going to read through 6 through 9, 6 through 8. So the background on this is there was a king who wanted to go to war with the ancient people of Israel, but at this time they didn't even have the name Israel. We're going to go into that right now. Excuse me, guys, I'm a little tired. This people are descendant of the Chaldees, and they sojourned heretofore in Mesopotamia, because they would not follow the gods of their fathers, which were in the land of Chaldea, for they left the way of their ancestors and worshipped the God of heaven, the God whom they knew. So they cast them out from the face of their gods, those are the idols, and they fled into Mesopotamia and sojourned there many days. So if you know anything about the Bible, you can kind of figure out who this is. This is the origin of Abraham. At this time, he was named Abram. So at this time, they did not have the name of Israel. In these times of the Chaldees, which are Sumerians, if you want to say. This was around the time of like Nimrod and so forth. So we're going to go forward. Next scripture we're going to focus on is verse 8. And you can read the story of Genesis chapter 11 and 12. This is precepted. So you can match this story from Judith 5, 6 through 8 with Genesis 11 and 12. So we're going to focus on verse 11:31 of Genesis. Okay. So you can see right here, this is Genesis 11:31. And Terah took Abram, his son, and Lot, the son of Haran, his son's son, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's wife, and they went forth with them from Ur of the Chaldees to the land of Canaan, and they came into Haran and dwelt there. So this is another indicating factor talking about Abraham came from the land of the Chaldees. Who are the Chaldees? That's something you need to look into. And they went into the land of Canaan, which is a descendant of Ham also. And Canaan and Ham were so-called black people. So we're going to continue to move forward. Why is Abraham around all these black people? Okay, so we're not going to look at verse 9, but I will read Genesis 12:1. So Genesis 12:1 is the Lord, or Yahweh, or Jehovah, or Yahweh, however you pronounce him. He spoke to Abram and said, "Get out of your country and from your kindred and from your father's house unto the land I will show you." So in the land of Haran, which is the land of Canaan, where all these black people are, he told Abraham, "Get out of your country and from your family." So, trying to figure out why Abraham, the ancient Hebrew, is around all these black people. Interesting. Let's move forward. Okay, so this second source is from 1910. It's called The Jew, a Negro. The Jew, a Negro. That's very interesting. I've seen the word Negro earlier. Said that Ham was the progenitor of the dark races except the Negro. You know, you do understand, for those who read the Bible in Genesis 10, Noah had 3 sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, or Japheth. So most people understand that Japheth gave birth to the Eurasians races, and Ham gave birth to the dark races, except the Negro. So where did the Negroes come from? You use some deductive reasoning. Okay, let's go to page 55 of Terah, the son-in-law of Nimrod. So this is from The Jew and Negro. This is page 55. And let's read a little bit about Abram's background and his father, Terah. So it reads, Terah, who is mentioned in Genesis as a descendant of Shem, and was born in Ur of the Chaldees, who we have already learned were doubtless Hamitic. And we know from Genesis that the ancestors of Abraham had dwelt for many centuries in the land of the Chaldees. Terah, Abram's father, had been a worshiper of idols. He worshipped the Anunnaki, the sky gods. And what is more important, the people of Mesopotamia are referred to by Jehovah as thy brethren. What? When the call was given to Abram to get out of Haran, where his father had died, Abram's father, Terah, was the son-in-law of Nimrod. According to the Eastern authors, this would give us added proof of the direct descent of Abram himself from what? Negro ancestry. So this word Negro is a different type of word from the word Negro earlier. This word Negro right here, it basically means black. Basically means black. So you have Abraham from this book, The Jew and Negro, 1910, written by Albert Abernathy, a white man, saying that Abraham came from black ancestry. Now, if we really want to think about it, if Abraham came from black ancestry because his father Terah married Nimrod's daughter was black, and this is basically showing you that Abraham is the grandson of Nimrod. And we do know Nimrod comes from the bloodline of Ham, who was also black. So when you talk about the Chaldees, it's such a tight connection between Ham and Shem, of what they looked like. It's kind of like saying that you have the Hamitic Empire, which was the Babylonian, the ancient Sumerian Empire. These people came from Ham. Nimrod built these cities, also like the Tower of Babel, that you couldn't really tell who was Hamitic or Shemitic. So that's that point. We're going to move forward. I could talk about this stuff all day. So now we're going to go to the book called The Roman Empire of the Edomite from 1853. Page 58, and we're going to look at it. So this is from page 58. We're going to start at the top. Very simple. It proves, if admitted, the identity of the Phoenicians with the Hebrew of the Bible. It shows that the Holy Tongue, that means ancient Hebrew or the Lashon Kodash, like the Holy Land, have been derived to the chosen seed through Ham's accursed son, Canaan. So basically, I'm gonna keep reading. And that the sacred texts of Moses and the prophets of Phoenicia expressed in the Chaldaic character, which characters may perhaps have been brought by Abram from the Ur of Chaldees. If now we find the descendants of the Phoenician Dido speaking in the days of Platus. Okay, I'm gonna stop right there. Basically, the language in Abram came out of a black area, the land of the Chaldees, in Ur, which is ancient Sumeria. That's another source. So these are separate books, and let alone the biblical book of Judith from like one something before the Common Era. I think it was 135. They had another book in the 1800s, in the 1900s, saying that Abraham came from an area predominantly ruled by black people. This is Father Abraham. Ancestors of the Israelites, the Jews. Gonna keep going. This is getting good. So we're gonna go to the book of Jasher, chapter 8. Another book that was removed. A lot of controversy around this book, but this, if you really want to know the background of Abraham, you need to read the book of Jasher 7, 8, and I think chapter 7 through 12. It explains a lot why Abraham had so much faith. Because when you see in the Bible, you just introduce to Abraham, and he's like, the Most High tells him, get up and leave, and you just leave. Like, that don't work like that. Something had to happen in Abraham's life to get him to get to a point where he can sacrifice his own son. A relationship had to be built. But when you listen to modern day religion, you get brainwashed. But I digress. Okay, this is Jasher 8, verse 1. And it was in the night that Avram, or Abram, was born, that all the servants of Terah and all the wise men, which is the astrologers of Nimrod, excuse me, and his conquerors came and ate and drank in the house of Terah, and they rejoiced with him on that night. Now, this is the birth of Abram, and you have his father and grandfather there. Seems pretty normal, right? And these are Nimrod. Remember, Nimrod's a black man. Let's keep going forward. So this right here is my world history chart. I suggest you buy one of these. It's very good on, finding out things they don't teach you. This is a full view of it. The yellow is the people of Shem. The blue is the people of Ham. And the pinkish is the people of Japheth. You can say those are the European nations, the African nations, and the Shemitic nations. People of Israel's in yellow. As you can see right here, you got the color code. Semitic, which is really Shemitic, Hamitic, and Japhetic. Church, the Christian Church and Reformation, Cain's descendants. Okay, so we're back at this again. And I want you to use some deductive reasoning. Like I said before, Ham gave birth to the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites. The Ethiopians um, is the bloodline that came through with Nimrod. Is pretty much you have to go read Genesis 10 to get like the each son had this son and so forth. But it says not the Negroes. So if Ham didn't give birth to the Negroes, and you know who was called Negroes, people over here in America, who gave birth to the Negroes? They just fall out of the sky. So it wasn't Japheth. So we can only, conclude that it is Shem. So when you think about it, you have Ham and Shem and Japheth. According to the scholars, it says Ham was dark like a raven. Shem was brown and ruddy. And Japheth was white like snow. And this is where you get, different sorts of nations today. Why is all this important? Let's see what I got left on here. I don't know if you can see this, but on the blue lines, you have Abraham in the land of Canaan, Abraham dealing with the Assyrians. Abraham's on the blue lines. So these are areas people he were interacting with. Also on that blue line is the Philistines. And we do know that David fought Philistines. So Philistines on the blue line, that means they were what? They were black. So what do you think Goliath looked like? Okay, so I put this in here and I'm going to read it because it's very important. Because when you talk about the word Israel, there's a group of people in your mind that you see. But according to this, the name of Israel, and the word name in the Bible means fame and like legacy or family. It said this name would be forgotten. These people will not exist anymore. So let's look. A prayer for the destruction of Israel's enemies. Keep not thou silent, O God. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. For lo, or look, your enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken secret counsel against your people, and consulted against your hidden ones. They have said, come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more remembered. Now understand right now, the name of Israel is remembered. Now when we say Israel, we're thinking about the land. But this right here is referring to Israel as a nation, a people. And necessarily nation has nothing to do with a land. Nation is a people, a race. So there's a race of people that had the name of Israel that have left the remembrance of all mankind. Understand that even the scriptures themselves, God himself in the scriptures and multiple scriptures throughout the Bible and the Old Testament said, I'm going to make the world forget who you are. Not only that, I'm going to send you into slavery to the four corners of the world and to all the nations. Now, what group of people has gone into slavery into all nations? I digress.
Look at this.
So I'm going to stop this and I'm going to let it play. And I want you to hear what this guy says. Basically, by now, you should have figured it out. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the fathers of Israel, are black. The Bible itself is a black book. The word Bathsheba, David's wife. That word Bath Sheba means daughter of Sheba. Bayat Sheba. Who is Sheba? It is an African. So David married an African woman, Uriah the Hittite. Hittites are Africans. Ancient Hamites. I'm using the word African. I'm just keeping it modern so you can understand where I'm going. They were black. So you have Ham and Shem kind of always commingling together. Ham's bloodline and Shem's bloodline are always kind of commingling together. Moses himself married an Ethiopian. This picture right here is supposed to represent Jesus, but you should realize it doesn't. But the biblical Jesus, or if you want to be more pronounced correctly, is Joshua. That would be the correct name. He, when he was young, had to run away from Herod, who was an Edomite, the enemy of Israel, into Egypt to hide. Now, how could the Messiah go into Egypt and hide as a baby? Why would Joseph and Mary take him to Egypt? That's because they blend in very well with the Hamitic people, them being brown or black, whatever you want to call it. You have Joseph that was sent into Egypt. When his brothers came to him, they didn't know who he was. Yes, he had grew up to be a man, but he looked Egyptian. Of course, he had on Egyptian garments. But his skin matched the Egyptians. Had a lot of melanin, and they didn't know who he was. Now remember, these people groups look the same. I don't understand why there can be so many European nations that can be British or Irish or Italian or that have less melanin or white, so they can have different tribes, but black people are just one race. Come on now. And let's not forget Paul the Apostle, who was called an Egyptian. Why would someone call a olive-skinned man an Egyptian? Now, we're talking about old times. We're not talking about today. Get all the whitewashing out of your mind. So, this is the origin of Israel. As you can see, there's many connections to African nations. And if you do your research and look up the word Semitic or Shemitic, you'll see that Shemitic people are described as Afro-Asiatic peoples. So I'm going to let this video play, and I hope you understand the importance of knowing who the people of the book are. Because according to prophecy, once the people understand who they are and repent, the king is going to return to redeem them from the four corners of the earth and take vengeance on the nations that abused them. Be blessed.
They gave us this because they wanted us to think Mashiach was a so-called white man. They gave this to us so that we would see them as gods. What was the purpose of this picture? The purpose was so that we would see them as Noah. Look at this picture of Cecil D. DeMille's movie, The Ten Commandments. This was to make us believe the people in the Bible look like them. Look at this clip.
Joshua!
400 years in bondage, and today he won't move.
They wanted us to think 400 years of affliction happened in Egypt. Look, they showed us this because they wanted us to believe Moses looked like this. And look at what it says. in the beginning credits of this movie. Again, they wanted us to think the 400 years of affliction happened in Egypt. These pictures and videos are examples of how the enemy promotes their lies and their doctrines by using pictures that have their faces to make the world believe they are us. Before I ever read the Bible, I saw the movie The Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston standing on a mountain as Moses. These images were made to deceive us. When we come into the understanding of who we are taught to question everything the enemy gave us. Yet brothers are holding to a doctrine that the enemy has clearly pushed by the means of their false images and storytelling filled with lies.